Hi everyone, this is Dr. Han for your 3342. You might see the different setting here. I'm recording this presentation from One Button Studio at our library. If you haven't used it already, this is my first time, and I was curious how it works out. So, the extension, as an extension from today's class, I wanted to record my presentation about those two readings that I shared with you about the rhetoric of the popular culture, rhetoric in critical studies, and also the music perspectives. Okay, so first of all, you've all done wonderful job sharing your music today. I think that we've covered the rich ranges of the musics, starting from the lyrics and the videos, and then the visual aspect of it, message aspect of it. So we actually talked a lot in class, and with this video, I am hoping to orient those texts, those as examples of rhetorical text, and how hopefully guide you to do the rhetorical criticism, how we can view those, and then also other popular culture text as well, as a good, the samples of rhetorical text. Okay, all right, so I slightly changed the order of my slide, and then first of all, I think until the still during. Still, while your memory is fresh, when you want to talk, I want to talk with you a little bit about the music approach. So, music approach is just one newer approach, rather new approach, just like visual rhetoric, that talks about, that considers the rhetorics of music. Okay, and then most importantly, not all music is rhetoric, right? Just like not all visuals are rhetoric. Music becomes the rhetoric, as long as the critic can define or find out certain aspect, rhetorical aspect, the rhetorical dimensions in it, right? But what makes the music aspect, the music unique as a way or form of rhetoric, as you can see here, is non-discursive symbols, right? When you analyze the speech, we tend to focus more on the discursive construction of the message. Yes, you can look into the lyrics of the music, but for example, the Carly's example today, we talked about we only listen the music with the title, and then we can consider that as has rhetorical dimension, right? So when we choose the music as the rhetorical text, we are talking about, it could be both, but it also about non-discursive symbols and non-discursive rhetoric, right? And the music perspective introduces this unique perspective that the author called the illusion of life, meaning that it is the words and the music and sound. So you can recall your music that, the music that you played today in today's class as a sample of that has the word dimension and also the music and then sound dimension. And then sometimes the message that, the give to the audience contradict. I think that I can talk about more as I go through. But, the lanes example was like that. And Ella's example was like that. Sometimes the music is very much bright, but then the lyrics has a very deeper and sad meaning into it. So it gives the impression, all over that, the impression that the music can release, and then that's the rhetorical dimension that we can talk about, right? And then the music can convey concepts and then also erode certain emotion, and then that's a unique aspect, as we can all agree, right? The music also many times erodes or has appeals to people's emotion. And then most importantly, from my perspective, music as representation of. Okay, so this is a good vocabulary that you can take away. Okay, take as a takeaway knowledge. Okay, music as representation, for example, of struggle, right? Or music as this particular music, or the rhetorical text, music as a rhetorical text, is the representation of life's journey. For example, in Daniel's case, that Daniel presented today. Okay, so we can talk, all dimensions of it, and after today's class, I think it's becoming clearer. Okay, here. Right. Okay, so what does it mean to say music is rhetoric? Okay, music, as important thing here is that music as rhetoric is not about, music appreciation nor unique meaning each individual attached to a certain music and then musical experience, but rather we are focusing more on, the rhetorical discursive or non-discursive constructions of meaning, okay, through the music and dissemination of it, right? So it is not about, the music as a communication to you, to your family. You could say that, but as the critic, you want to be able to write more than that, okay? All right. Okay, so, moving slightly to a broader direction, okay, how we can use all of those approach here is that, so we want to look at the persuasive argument conveyed through music, okay, either enforce or challenge a taken for granted belief or behavior, okay, and let's say, okay, we can apply, once again, we can apply lots of examples that we talked about today, but, you fill in the blank right here, okay? So broadly speaking, the reason why I wanted to come up with the music as an example of the rhetorical text is, number one, wanted to present a newer approach, just like visual rhetoric, a newer approach to rhetorical criticism, but at the same time, number two, orient the music text as a text of popular culture. And then popular culture, the study of popular culture tends to fall under this area called critical studies, okay? And let me explain a little bit about what that is. So let me see. Okay, so rhetorical method in critical studies. So what is this about? Okay, so once again, most studies about popular culture, music videos, movies, or popular text that circulates around, mostly around media, right? Mediated discourse, okay, are within critical studies, if not in rhetorical studies, okay? So a lot of film studies or pop culture studies or pop music studies fall under the critical approach, okay? And also, number two, rhetorical criticism, okay? Because you have to, evaluate the meaning or the value of text, okay, at the end of the day. It's by its nature, it is critical, okay, if you would agree with that, okay. So critical approach offers how to think about rhetorical criticism, okay, but also how to go about critiquing pop culture text, okay. So this, I'm introducing this as a one approach to popular culture text, okay. All right, so rhetorical function of text. As a critic, you want to look into rhetorical function of text. And then right here, in this case, we're talking about popular culture, any pop culture example as a rhetorical text. Okay, and then up until this slide, I think I covered in class, but the text influence through meanings. So we want to look into the meanings of text really well. Okay, and then an influence is a rhetorical dimension. So we want to think about, rhetorical dimension of the text and the leading to choices and actions for the audience. So the text, okay, the text, it could be the musical text, or visual text, or both of them, okay, facilitates the creation of meanings that influence those who receive them, okay? The text can mean different things, right? So usually the text is composed of very much carefully composed, okay, for the purpose of influencing the listener or the viewer, right? And then you want to kind of deconstruct, okay, analyze how that is going on within the text. Okay, so let's say, in terms of the multiple meanings, think about several music examples shared in class today that had multiple meanings. Once again, Ella and Danielle's examples that offer multiple interpretations, right? Or even Collins, example in which meaning or interpretation is completely open to the audience. Okay, so it is not usually then the meaning of the text is not straightforward. It could be but it's multi-dimensioned. So you want to look into that layers or the different meanings or multiple meanings that text can show you. So the meanings that text encourage people to accept are pretty much, I think, the dominant reading. Certain texts are, many texts are constructed carefully so that so that most audience can read the meaning of or accept the meaning of the text in certain way, right? So we think or act certain ways in response to text because of the meanings that text have for us and urge us to attribute. Okay, another example that we can think about, for example, would be this can happen a lot in K-pop, and then I think the Maddie's example today from Stray Kids, the message sometimes, that they sent out the direct message to fans. The Maddie said that it was about the love song, but they insert a certain, the visual clue that showed, their fandom, right? So. It can be the direct message, that is included in the lyrics and in their performance, okay, in it. All right. Okay. So this is probably the most important message or the most important highlight of the critical approach that we want to understand is that, the text has the multiple meanings, but the most important, the function probably of the critical studies is to treat text as sites of struggle over meanings. Okay, so symbolic meaning is always complex and rarely simple and straightforward, right? So once again, you want to find out very much the layered, the layers of meanings, and then sometimes the meanings can be contradicting or complex, right? So we want to find that out. Okay. So, as a critic, the key questions, okay, that you can ask would be about the meaning and complexity, and then evaluation, right? And you want to evaluate the text, right? And what does a text, an experience, an object in action, and so forth mean to different people, right? So it can be, I think we can talk about a lot of things, about this. We covered so many good examples, right? Alex's example, for example, it was from the very first sight, or first listening, it was hard for us to, understand this is about the school shooting, right? The gun shooting. But, and then gun shooting or the gun culture, for example, has a very much different meaning, okay, across the world, right? And then I think Alex covered that aspect, but that is about the complexity of text and experiences, okay, as they are actually experienced, okay. All right, and another thing here is that critical studies, as usually the rhetorical studies is, it is a part of qualitative method, meaning that it is, it is subjected to your interpretation as a critic. So you have to be very specific about how you get to that evaluation, right? Okay. So it is not necessarily about scientific counting, right? Okay, so this word came up, how many times. Although there are such ways to do it, and then I'm going to explain a little bit more about this method called critical discourse analysis in our class next week, right? So there are, certain counting or, this counting for the purpose of seeing the pattern, finding out the pattern that can be included in this process of qualitative analysis. But by its nature, this is qualitative rather than quantitative. Okay. So, to kind of wrap up, our discussion here, so far we've learned, in this class about many different forms of actually, the communicative or discursive forms, but I'm adding just two other options here, I guess, right? So if you think about, certain rhetorical text, pop culture text tend to be under the critical approach and critical method, right? And then critical approach and critical method, and certain rhetorical text, and then the way this approach view the text, rhetorical text, is a site of struggle over the meaning, right? And then we also talk about the music as another approach to, the rhetorical studies. Here, what serve as rhetorical text would be either music with or without lyrics. And I'm so glad that, we had this activity in this class today that, we've seen a music that was with lyrics. Okay, one time we listened to this without lyrics, but one time we, read through the lyrics, right? And then sometimes it is completely without lyrics, just like, the Carly's example, right? And with the lyrics and the visual aspect, you can also do the little addition here, right? Okay, so music by itself or in communication with other argumentative forms could be the visual, right? The visual is another argumentative forms that we can, consider, right? Okay, but then, all in all, what we are, seeing when we say music as rhetorical text is we're seeing at the music as a form of argumentation, right? Or representation of certain, the group of people. For example, Jared example, right? The representation is such an important terminology here, right? And importantly, right here again, the musical text can also be a site of struggle over the meanings. So as a critic, you can actually do, you do the task of, explaining and unpacking those meanings, and just as a heads up, we continue. We are adding these columns. As we move forward to the methods. Rhetorical criticism method. So, for example, list continues to include. We're going to talk about fantasy theme analysis. We also talk about generic analysis. We talked about ideological analysis and metaphoric analysis, narrative method, and pentattic, meaning that dramatistic, okay, criticism. Okay, so I just added critical and music approach today. Okay, especially because with the visual rhetoric aspect, these two approaches are the most used, I think the mostly used in popular culture text. So hopefully that'll help your pop culture analysis paper. Okay. This is about writing a paper. This is my final slide, and I'm going to explain a little bit about how you can find the text, number one, and then how you can, approach, how you communicate, how you engage with the text, okay, in search of the meaning. Right? We said that the text is a site of struggle over meaning. So as a critic, you want to search for appropriate meaning for the readers, right? Okay. So let's see. And then what's interesting about this chapter, and then I think this useful way of explanation that this chapter use is, it puts certain terms in the continuum. Okay, so I'm going to explain more about it. But in terms of the finding a text can be very much discrete, okay, or it could be a diffuse, meaning that you can choose one particular text. Okay, let's say, I think the one particular text example of that would be any example that you shared in this class, right? We had in this class. I think each of you presented just one text, right? I think it was about the range of 2 to 4 minutes or so, right? So one music itself or one movie itself or sometimes just one scene, right? Or one character from a movie or film, that can be the text. So discrete. So it could be just one concrete or discrete, or it could be diffuse. Text can be diffuse. Okay, it could be something about more about the genre, hip hop as a genre or K-pop as a genre. So for example, let's say the Maddie's example of Stray Kids or BTS, for example. Blackpink. These days, the K-pop artist. The text for them are so diffused in that, the music video, they release the music video, but then they communicate about their music video, on social media, right? So as if they're communicating, they are communicating directly with the fan, to the fan, right? And then fan can also communicate to them with the comments, right? So in this case, all of those, social media, text. Okay, so those are fragments, right? All those fragments of text can be altogether rhetorical text, right? So you can talk about just one particular the text, or you can talk about a set of, the diffused text, okay? And the second continuum is the sources of the meaning, okay? It can be very much broad, or it can go to the narrow end. So you want to, narrow down to some extent your analysis or interpretation to the meaning that is interesting, okay? Interesting, influential, and at times controversial. Okay, so important thing here is that for your popular culture analysis and also your rhetorical criticism project, we all agree that we can find rhetoric all over every places, any places around us. But you want to, as a critic, you want to choose some significant, something important, not just for you, but to the society or to the people. And then you have to write that. Okay, why people wants to read your text, will read your criticism. Okay, so you don't want to treat trivial topic. That's another important part, right? So you want to think about the meaning Okay, meaning from the range of the broad to narrow, okay, to the narrow sense. Okay, the next continuum would be under a context. Okay, so text and context is always in good relationship, in close relationship together. So you find the text, but then you also want to analyze the context of that text. So the third continuum is the choice of context. The choice of context. So each text is constructed during some first moment or range of moments. So, in case of, in the examples that we shared today, the time that a particular song was released, excuse me, the time of release as the direct context, right? This song was released in 2007. This song was released in 2012. This particular song was released in 2020 during the pandemic. That itself has a contextual meaning in it, and then also the scene that lyrics tries to convey. For example. So I'm trying to separate those two. So one would be the direct context, but at the same time, there might be multiple context in it. So for example, Lane's example. I was born into USA. That was the repetitive lyrics. But then, Lane explained to us that was about Vietnam War. So then the music was released, after the Vietnam War, way after. It is way more contemporary, right? But at the same time, the important context that was embedded in the song or the meaning of the song, the text, okay, is the Vietnam War that has particular context. So, it could be one context that you want to tease out, or it could be multiple contexts that you want to, find out the nuances, okay, different nuances. All right. And most importantly, text and context interact together. So text-context relationship. Okay. And then it could be reactive to the text, can be reactive to the context, or text itself can create the context. Okay. For example, I put Alex's example. The text or music reacts to the context or time of the school shooting, right? I couldn't help me, emotionally reacting to, for example, Uvalde, Texas, right? And then, we all know we had unfortunate event, right? The campus event as well. All right. So the certain particular text or the meaning of the text can be reactive to a particular context or time. Okay. At the same time, I felt that Maddie's example, for example, once again, K-pop, when you look at any K-pop's music and then also the choreo, the dance of any music, any K-pop song, okay, it tends to create, by itself, okay, creates the context in which fans can gather, right? So text can also become a particular context in which the audience or the listener can join, okay? Let's see. All right. Okay, and then finally, the fifth continuum would be the inside the text, okay? You want to go a little bit deeper inside the text, okay? We can talk about the music, but also you can also talk about the film, any movie or the film can also be the example. Let's say, if that film has the particular narrative structure, a particular, the story structure, that's something that you can look into it. But also, the text can be very much direct. Message can be, but the text message can be very much direct or broad. Okay, let's say the direct message is pretty much the explicit. Okay. when applied with the music example today, I think we can think about the rhythm or beat. And I think that was what made our activity kind of fun today, right? The Chris example, for example, it was a surprise in it, right? So there was one the direct presence of certain message, and then that was sometimes contradictory, right? Okay, so audience will get it, right? Okay. And then some message can be implied. Implied message is a little bit subtler and not always consciously intended to be perceived. Slightly deeper meaning than the direct lyrics, okay? I think this falls under the multiple interpretation that we talked about. Ella's example talked about, and Daniel's example talked about. Jared, that specifically showed this is the part that I was a little bit confused. Okay, so then that can be intentional, right? So that confusion can be intentional. So those implied or vague, okay, message can also be a task for the critics to analyze. Okay. And finally, the structure can be something that you can also look into, several patterns or forms or the bare bones organization of the text, any storyline in the music video, right? Certain music video had very much the full story, and then traditionally, a lot of Korean the music video actually fell under that. That genre, the story starts and then ends in one music video. And then lately it's more, choreo based, dance based. But so though the structure itself can be the task for critics to analyze. Okay. Whew. All right. Okay. So going back to, let's say where we were. Okay, let me say, let's see, it's okay, we can, I will just close with this background. Maybe I can, okay, that's okay, yeah. All right, maybe I can close this for now and do a little bit of final say here. All right, okay. So this was my new attempt to, record my presentation, hoping that it helped your understanding of, the way you can start, initiate, the way you can initiate your rhetorical criticism paper, first with popular culture text, and then we will move on to your rhetorical, the criticism project. So, I approached with two approach. I presented two approach outside of our textbook reading. One was the critical approach and the other was the music approach. And then those two were intertwined. And then we will keep adding the list. Okay, hopefully this helped. And then if you have any question about my talk or if I missed out anything, you can always, you are always welcome to address those in class next week. Okay, so I look forward to having conversation about my talk today, and I will also bring in my own example to class next week. So we will start from there. Okay, thank you everyone. Have a great day and great weekend.